I'm Rachel, 34, and I built my tech company from nothing into an 8-figure exit. Despite my success, I keep a low profile, especially around my status-obsessed sister Kate. My private equity firm recently closed a $700,000 contract with Bellissimo Restaurant Group. Ironic, since Dad chose their flagship location for his 65th birthday dinner. Little did I know my understated approach would set the stage for the most vindicating night of my life. Before I tell you how my sister's mockery backfired spectacularly, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated by family. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston shaped who I am today. Our house on Maple Street wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable enough. Dad worked as an engineer at a local manufacturing plant, while Mom taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 4 blocks away. We never had luxury vacations or designer clothes, but we never went without necessities either. Those formative years instilled in me a practical approach to money that would later become the foundation of my business philosophy. Everything changed when I turned 15. The arguments between my parents had been building for months, but nothing prepared us for the afternoon Dad packed his suitcase and left. The divorce ripped through our family like a hurricane, leaving nothing untouched in its wake. Kate, who was 19 at the time, took it hardest. She'd always been Dad's favorite, and his departure felt like personal abandonment to her. Kate and I couldn't have been more different, even before the split. While I buried myself in computers and coding, finding solace in building things from nothing, Kate focused on appearances and social climbing. By 23, she'd married Thomas Sterling, an investment banker whose family name opened doors throughout Boston's elite social circles. On paper, they were the perfect power couple, her beauty and social skills complementing his financial acumen. What few people knew, including our own family, was that Thomas had a gambling problem that had gradually escalated over the years. Their outward displays of wealth, the vacation homes, luxury cars, designer wardrobes, masked growing financial instability. Kate compensated by doubling down on the appearance of success, becoming increasingly judgmental of anyone she perceived as less accomplished, especially me. My younger brother Ryan, now 30, always held a special place in my heart. 10 years younger than Kate, he somehow escaped the worst of the divorce fallout. He respected my work ethic and accomplishments, but he'd learned early to avoid confrontation with Kate. Her cutting remarks and emotional manipulations were easier to endure in silence than to challenge openly. So while Ryan and I maintained a genuine connection, he rarely defended me against Kate's belittlement. Dad remarried 5 years after the divorce to Diana, a kind-hearted hospital administrator. Unlike many stepmothers in similar situations, Diana never tried to replace our mom, but instead carved out her own role in our fractured family. She'd been the one tirelessly working behind the scenes to maintain family connections despite the tensions. Every holiday, every milestone celebration happened because of Diana's gentle but persistent efforts. Dad's health had been declining over the past year. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but enough concerning signs that his 65th birthday carried extra emotional weight. Diana had called each of us separately, emphasizing how much it would mean to him to have all his children together, celebrating peacefully for once. Despite my reservations about spending an evening as Kate's target, I couldn't refuse. What my family didn't know was how dramatically my life had changed since college. The coding projects that once served as escape from family drama had evolved into a software platform that streamlined supply chain logistics. I started my company in my apartment with 2 college friends, bootstrapping for 3 years before securing our first significant investment. 5 years later, we sold to a major tech corporation for a sum that still sometimes felt unreal when I thought about it. Instead of retiring, I channeled my passion and newly acquired capital into a private equity firm focused on revitalizing struggling but promising businesses. I found purpose in working with companies that had solid foundations but needed strategic restructuring to thrive in changing markets. My success wasn't measured in possessions, but in the jobs preserved and businesses transformed. I made a conscious decision to keep my financial success private, even from family. Part of it was practical. I'd seen how wealth changed relationships, created expectations, and attracted opportunists. But if I'm honest, another part was protective. After years of Kate's dismissive comments about my career choices and lifestyle, there was something satisfying about knowing the truth while letting her believe her assumptions. The most recent project my firm had taken on was the Bellissimo Restaurant Group. Once the crown jewel of Boston's fine dining scene, they'd struggled to adapt to changing consumer preferences and increased competition. My team spent 6 months analyzing their operations, revamping their business model, and implementing new systems. The $700,000 contract had been substantial, but the real reward was seeing a 30-year family business find new life. Antonio Bellissimo, the founder's son and current owner, had become not just a client but a friend through the process. By remarkable coincidence, or perhaps Diana's research into prestigious venues for Dad's birthday, the celebration was scheduled at Bellissimo's flagship restaurant. I hadn't mentioned my connection to the restaurant to anyone in my family. Part of me hoped the evening would pass without my professional life intersecting with our family dynamics. The rational part of me should have known better. The week leading up to Dad's birthday dinner filled me with a familiar anxiety. I'd accomplished more in business than most people twice my age, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, and spoken confidently to rooms full of industry leaders. Yet the thought of an evening with Kate reduced me to feeling like an insecure teenager again. I stood in front of my closet the evening of the dinner, second-guessing every potential outfit. Last Christmas, Kate had commented loudly on my sensible sweater, asking if tech startups must not pay very well these days. What she didn't realize was that my seemingly simple cashmere sweater cost more than her flashy designer dress. I just wore it because it was comfortable and well-made, not to broadcast its price tag. For tonight, I settled on a simple black dress with minimal jewelry, a pair of small diamond studs that had been my first purchase after selling my company, and a vintage watch that had belonged to my grandmother. My approach to luxury had always been understated quality over obvious branding. To the untrained eye, I looked professionally put together, but not particularly wealthy. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, my executive assistant. Final documents for the Westbrook acquisition are ready for your review. Also, Antonio from Bellissimo called to confirm everything's set for your private dining room next week with the Japanese investors. I replied quickly, "Thanks, I'll review in the morning." At Dad's birthday dinner, tonight at Bellissimo's. Ironically, Jessica, who knew all about my family dynamics, responded with a laughing emoji and good luck. Remember, you own buildings taller than your sister's ego. That made me smile as I grabbed my keys and headed to the garage. I passed my weekend car, a limited edition sports model, and opted for my everyday electric sedan. Another choice that Kate would undoubtedly interpret as evidence of my limited success rather than my practical values. The drive to Bellissimo took 20 minutes, my anxiety building with each mile. I arrived precisely on time, handing my keys to the valet who greeted me with a professional nod. The restaurant's facade was understated elegance, historic Boston architecture lovingly preserved, with warm light spilling from the windows onto the cobblestone street. As I approached the entrance, I spotted Kate and Thomas already waiting in the lobby. Kate wore a red designer dress with statement jewelry that caught the light aggressively with every movement. Thomas stood beside her in what appeared to be a new custom suit, checking his phone with the distracted air that had become his signature in recent years. "Well, look who made it on time for once," Kate said by way of greeting, giving me a quick air kiss near my cheek. "I was just telling Thomas you'd probably show up in jeans since you're still in that casual startup phase." She did air quotes around the phrase, examining my outfit with barely concealed disappointment at finding nothing obvious to criticize. "Happy to disappoint," I replied with a measured smile. "Is Dad here yet?" "Diana just texted their parking," Thomas offered, briefly looking up from his phone. I noticed a slight tension in his expression, that seemed deeper than his usual distraction. Kate adjusted her diamond bracelet. We've already spoken to the host. Apparently, the restaurant is completely booked, but they've given us their best table. Though I'm sure it's nothing like the places you visit with your— what do you call them? Coding friends. I bit back a retort as the door opened, bringing in a welcome blast of cool evening air along with Dad and Diana. Dad looked thinner than when I'd last seen him 3 months ago, but his face lit up seeing all his children together. "There's my girl," he exclaimed, embracing me warmly. His familiar cologne brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Diana hugged me next, whispering, "Thank you for coming," in my ear with genuine gratitude. The maitre d' approached our group, but instead of James, the manager I'd worked closely with during the Bellissimo project, it was Monica, his new assistant who I'd met only briefly. "Good evening, Sterling Party of 5, she confirmed with a professional smile, not showing any sign of recognizing me. "Please follow me to your table." As we wound through the restaurant, I noticed several subtle changes our team had implemented: the spacing of tables, the lighting design, the new digital system servers used for orders. Small tweaks that collectively enhance the dining experience while improving operational efficiency. Our table was indeed one of the best in the house, positioned near the windows with a view of the Boston skyline beginning to twinkle with early evening lights. The seating arrangement, whether by chance or Kate's orchestration, placed me directly across from Kate and Thomas, with Dad at the head of the table between us. As we settled in, Ryan arrived, slightly out of breath. "Sorry I'm late. Client meeting ran over." My younger brother had followed Dad into engineering, working for a firm specializing in sustainable building design. He gave me a genuine smile and quick hug before taking the remaining seat. "How's the new project going?" I asked him as servers brought water and menus. "It's actually," Ryan began, but Kate interrupted. "Let's not bore everyone with work talk right away," she said. "This is Daddy's celebration, after all." She turned to our father with a practiced smile. "The champagne I pre-ordered should be arriving momentarily." I caught Ryan's eye roll and shared a quick look of understanding with him. Some family dynamics never changed, no matter how many years passed. The first course arrived along with a bottle of champagne that Kate had apparently researched extensively. As glasses were filled, Dad initiated conversation about his retirement plans, a workshop he planned to build, fishing trips he wanted to take, and books he'd been saving to read. "Diana and I are thinking about that river cruise in Europe next spring," he mentioned, looking more animated than he had when we arrived. "Always wanted to see those old castles along the Rhine." "That sounds wonderful, Harold," Diana said, squeezing his hand affectionately. "Europe is lovely in spring," Kate interjected. "Thomas and I did the south of France last May. Our hotel had the most stunning view of Monaco Harbor. You should really consider upgrading from those river cruises, Daddy. Thomas could recommend some proper accommodations, couldn't you, darling?" Thomas nodded absently, his attention clearly elsewhere. I noticed him checking his phone under the table every few minutes. "I think Dad's idea sounds perfect," I said. "River cruises let you see multiple cities without constantly repacking, and the Rhine Valley is beautiful." Kate swirled her champagne before taking a deliberate sip. "Speaking of work, Rachel, what exactly are you doing these days?" "It's always so vague when you talk about it." There it was, the first direct dig of the evening, delivered less than 20 minutes into dinner. "Still in the tech sector," I answered simply. "Consulting mostly." "Consulting," Kate repeated the word as if it were a euphemism for unemployment. "How flexible. Must be nice to have such an undemanding schedule." Thomas suddenly seemed to tune back into the conversation. "Small business can be challenging," he said in a tone that managed to be simultaneously patronizing and dismissive. "Have you considered corporate positions? I know several firms always looking for people with basic tech skills." Diana jumped in, clearly trying to redirect. "Ryan was telling us about a fascinating green building project his firm is working on. Something about regenerative energy." "Regenerative design," Ryan corrected gently. It's a healthcare center that will actually produce more energy than it consumes. How nice, Kate said without interest before turning to the approaching sommelier. We'll need to select wines for dinner. I'm thinking we start with the Puligny Montrachet for appetizers and move to the 2015 Barolo with the main course. She glanced at me with a thin smile. Unless you think that's excessive, Rachel. We want to treat Dad properly for his birthday. The sommelier looked to me reflexively, a small professional courtesy I'd earned during the months working with the restaurant, then quickly covered by turning to Dad as the presumed host. The wines Kate had selected would add nearly $800 to the bill, but I simply smiled and focused on making the evening pleasant for Dad. So Dad, I said as our appetizers arrived, tell me more about the workshop you're planning. What will be your first project? Dad launched enthusiastically into details about his planned woodworking equipment, momentarily free from Kate's status performance. Deanna caught my eye with a grateful look. For the next 15 minutes, we managed genuine conversation about Dad's interests, Ryan's work, and Diana's community garden project. The respite was short-lived. As our main courses arrived, Kate's voice grew progressively louder, her gestures more expansive, clearly designed to draw attention from neighboring tables. Of course, the benefit Gayla Thomas and I chaired last month raised over $200,000 for children's literacy, she announced, though no one had asked. The governor attended, along with several celebrities. I'm heading the committee again next year. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the ease of our earlier conversation evaporating. Diana attempted another redirect. Rachel, didn't you mention volunteering with a coding program for girls in underserved schools? Before I could answer, Kate laughed. How sweet. Teaching little girls to be just like you. The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. I maintained my composure, reminding myself that this evening wasn't about me or Kate, it was about celebrating Dad. I turned the conversation back to him, asking about a fishing spot he'd mentioned earlier. As dinner progressed, I noticed something odd. The restaurant had been fully booked according to Monica, yet midway through our meal, servers began preparing the private dining room visible through glass doors across from our table. Kate noticed too. How strange, they said they were fully booked when there's an empty private room, she remarked to the server refilling our water. That room was reserved months in advance for a special client, the young woman explained. Well, it seems they're not showing up, Kate pressed. It would have been much more appropriate for my father's celebration. The server looked uncomfortable. I believe there was a scheduling adjustment. If you'll excuse me, she hurried away toward the kitchen. Minutes later, Monica approached our table. Mr. Sterling, I've just been informed that our private dining room has unexpectedly become available. If you'd prefer, we can relocate your party there for dessert and after-dinner drinks. With our compliments, of course. Kate's expression shifted from surprise to smug satisfaction. How lovely. I knew they could accommodate us properly if they tried. She turned to me with a pointed look. See, Rachel, this is how established restaurants treat valued patrons. As we were escorted to the private room, I caught sight of a familiar face, Jamal Washington, one of Boston's most successful real estate developers and a recent investor in my firm. He nodded respectfully in my direction, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Ryan, who glanced between us with curiosity. The private dining room was Bellissimo's crown jewel. Hand-painted murals, a stunning chandelier, and windows overlooking the garden courtyard with its fountain and carefully curated plantings. Kate immediately began taking photos for her social media, positioning herself prominently in each shot. I can't imagine what this room normally costs, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Probably more than some people's monthly income. Her gaze flicked meaningfully toward me. Ryan caught my eye and subtly shook his head in disbelief at Kate's behavior. Meanwhile, Thomas was once again absorbed in his phone, his forehead creased with what looked increasingly like worry rather than mere distraction. As we settled into our new surroundings, I noticed several other diners nodding discreetly in my direction or offering small smiles of recognition. Boston's business community was relatively tight-knit, and my firm's recent successes hadn't gone unnoticed. Ryan clearly picked up on these interactions, looking increasingly confused by the disconnect between how others perceived me and how my own sister treated me. As the dinner plates were cleared away, Kate straightened in her chair with the air of someone about to make an announcement. "I've arranged something special for dessert," she declared, gesturing toward the door where a server appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. The server approached with practiced formality. "Complimentary Dom Perignon, courtesy of Mrs. Kate Sterling," he announced, distributing the glasses. Kate stood, raising her glass in a toast. "To my wonderful father on his 65th birthday," she began, her voice taking on the practiced cadence she used for her charity speeches. "Daddy, Thomas, and I wanted to give you something meaningful today. Something that reflects how much we value family and future." She paused dramatically, glancing around to ensure all attention was focused on her. "We've established a significant contribution to your retirement fund that will ensure you and Diana can take not just one river cruise, but many first-class journeys wherever you desire." Dad looked genuinely touched, if a bit embarrassed by the public nature of the gesture. "That's very generous, sweetheart. Thank you both." Kate wasn't finished. She turned toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Rachel, perhaps you'd like to share what you've done for Dad's milestone birthday. I'm sure we're all curious." The table fell silent. Diana looked uncomfortable, Ryan tensed, and Dad began to protest that gifts weren't necessary. But Kate's challenge hung in the air, impossible to ignore without seeming petty. "Actually," I said calmly, "I set up a modest investment portfolio in Dad's name last year. It's been quietly growing since then. What I didn't mention was that the modest portfolio contained carefully selected pre-IPO shares from companies my network had vetted, already worth 6 figures and likely to multiply several times over." Kate laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "How cute. Playing at being a financial advisor now, are we?" "Well, it's the thought that counts, isn't it?" She turned to Thomas. "Darling, perhaps you should give Rachel some investment tips sometime. Help her with her little portfolio." Thomas nodded mechanically, but I noticed a fine sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the room's comfortable temperature. The dessert course arrived, an elaborate display of pastries and chocolate sculptures, with "Happy Birthday, Harold" written in gold leaf across a mirror-glazed cake. Kate made sure everyone knew she had specially commissioned it from Bellissimo's acclaimed pastry chef. As we finished dessert, servers cleared plates and Monica approached with a leather folder. "Will this be one check or separate, Mr. Sterling?" Before Dad could answer, Kate interjected. "One check, of course. It's Daddy's birthday." Monica nodded and discreetly placed the folder next to Dad. He opened it, and I saw his eyes widen slightly at the total, just over $4,000, driven by Kate's wine selections, champagne, and custom dessert. "Let me get that, Dad," I offered, reaching for the folder. Kate's eyebrows shot up. "Really, Rachel? Are you sure? That's very ambitious of you." The doubt in her voice was unmistakable. "I insist," I said simply, sliding my black card into the folder and handing it back to Monica. "Such a heavy black card for a consultant," Kate remarked. "Is that one of those prepaid cards meant to look premium?" I chose not to respond, sipping my coffee instead. Dad gave me a grateful smile, clearly uncomfortable with both the bill amount and Kate's comments. Several uncomfortable minutes passed. The evening was finally winding down, and I was mentally calculating how soon I could politely leave when Monica returned, her expression strained. "Ms. Coleman," she said, using my last name rather than addressing me as part of the Sterling party. "I'm terribly sorry, but your card has been declined." The words hung in the air for a moment before Kate's triumphant voice broke the silence. "You can't even pay for dinner," she exclaimed, loud enough that heads turned at nearby tables. "All this pretending to be successful, and you can't even cover a family dinner." Thomas gave a condescending chuckle. "Credit limit issues are common for small business owners. Cash flow can be unpredictable." My face burned as I reached for my phone. There must be some mistake. Let me check with my bank. No need to embarrass yourself further, Kate continued, clearly relishing the moment. Thomas will cover it, of course. She looked around the table with a satisfied expression. I just think it's important we be honest about where we are in life, don't you? All this pretending can't be healthy. Dad looked mortified, Diana seemed ready to sink through the floor, and Ryan was staring daggers at Kate. I felt a knot of humiliation in my stomach as I texted my bank's concierge service about the declined card. Perhaps this is a good lesson, Kate continued, warming to her subject. It's important to live within one's means. I've always said that presenting a false image is just setting yourself up for moments exactly like this. Thomas pulled out his wallet, extracting his own premium card with a flourish. It happens to the best of us, Rachel. Well, not the best, but you know what I mean. His patronizing smile made my fingers itch to throw my water in his face. I have other cards, I said quietly, reaching for my purse. Of course you do, sweetie, Kate said in the same tone one might use with a child insisting they could fly. But let's not prolong this awkward moment. Thomas has it covered. As Thomas handed his card to Monica, I received a text from my bank. No issues with your account. Card active with no limitations. Perhaps merchant error. Before I could respond, the door to the private dining room burst open and Antonio Bellissimo himself rushed in, looking alarmed. His normally impeccable appearance was slightly disheveled, as if he'd hurried from elsewhere. Ms. Rachel, he exclaimed, then caught himself, glancing around at my family's surprised faces. I mean Miss Coleman. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Antonio approached our table with the urgent manner of someone attempting to prevent a disaster. Monica trailed behind him, looking mortified. Ms. Rachel, please accept our deepest apologies, Antonio said, his Italian accent more pronounced in his agitated state. There's been an inexcusable error with your payment. Kate's smug expression faltered slightly. You know my sister. Antonio turned to her with surprise. Your sister. Ms. Coleman is your sister. He looked between us, clearly making connections. I had no idea. Ms. Coleman is one of our most valued business partners. Business partners, Dad echoed, looking confused. Antonio nodded vigorously. Of course. Ms. Coleman's firm has transformed our entire restaurant group. The payment issue is entirely our mistake. He turned back to me. Ms. Rachel, we're still in your debt for $700,000 from last month's contract. Your card was declined because Monica didn't realize we have specific instructions never to charge you at any of our establishments. The table fell dead silent. Kate's mouth literally hung open, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. There was a mix-up with our staff scheduling tonight, Antonio continued, seemingly oblivious to the shock rippling around the table. James, who knows you well, had a family emergency. Monica is new and didn't recognize you. He turned to Monica. This is Rachel Coleman, the consultant who developed our entire business restructuring. She's the reason we're booked solid for the next 3 months. Monica's face flushed deep red. I'm so terribly sorry, Ms. Coleman. The system flagged your card because of the payment protocol, not because of any issue with the card itself. Dad was looking at me as if seeing me for the first time. $700,000 contract, he repeated faintly. The kitchen door swung open again as several staff members entered carrying trays with espresso and cordials. Antonio insisted on our special reserve grappa for Ms. Coleman's table. One explained as they distributed the delicate glasses. The color had drained entirely from Kate's face. Thomas was staring at me with a mixture of disbelief and sudden calculation in his eyes. This dinner is, of course, entirely complimentary, Antonio insisted. And I'd like to extend an offer of private dining for your family for the next year, with our compliments. It's the least we can do after this embarrassing mistake. I maintained my composure, though my heart was racing at this unexpected collision of my professional and family worlds. Thank you, Antonio, but that's not necessary. I'd still like to pay for my father's birthday dinner. Absolutely not, Antonio protested. I cannot charge the person responsible for saving my family's legacy. Without your firm's intervention, we might have had to sell after 3 generations. Ryan was watching the scene unfold, with an expression that hovered between shock and barely suppressed amusement. Diana seemed quietly proud, while Dad continued to look stunned. Kate had recovered enough to attempt damage control. "Well, of course Rachel has done well," she said, her voice overly bright. "I've always told everyone how clever my sister is. Just last week at my charity board meeting, I was saying to the governor's wife how technology is such an important field these days." Her transparent pivot from mockery to claimed pride would have been amusing if it weren't so typical. Thomas, meanwhile, was eyeing me with new interest. "Rachel, you should have mentioned your connection to Bellissimo," he said smoothly. "Though I understand discretion in business matters. My firm actually handles several restaurant groups as well. Perhaps we should discuss potential synergies sometime." Before I could respond, Thomas's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and that flash of worry I'd noticed earlier returned, stronger now. "Excuse me, I need to take this," he muttered, pushing back from the table and walking quickly toward the restaurant's entrance. Antonio, still intent on making amends, began describing to my family the work my firm had done for Bellissimo, the operational systems we'd implemented, the marketing strategy we'd developed, the financial restructuring that had turned their business around. Ms. Coleman's team produced a 1,000% return on our investment in just 6 months, he explained enthusiastically. "We're now expanding to 2 new locations next year." Kate sat rigid in her chair, her earlier triumph completely deflated. Each word from Antonio seemed to physically pain her, as the reality of my actual success became increasingly clear to everyone at the table. "You never mentioned any of this," Dad said to me, his voice a mixture of confusion and dawning pride. "Rachel is famously modest," Antonio answered for me. "Many of her clients don't even know she sold her software company for 8 figures before she was 30. She's transformed dozens of businesses like ours." I caught Ryan's eye across the table. He raised his glass in a subtle toast, his expression saying everything words couldn't. After years of witnessing Kate's treatment of me, this moment of vindication clearly satisfied him deeply. Kate made another attempt to salvage her position. "Well, this explains why you never seemed concerned about money. I always knew you must have some success we weren't seeing." Her tone suggested she'd somehow been in on the secret all along rather than actively dismissing my career for years. Antonio turned to Dad. "Mr. Coleman, you must be incredibly proud of your daughter. She's one of the most respected business minds in Boston." "Sterling," Kate corrected reflexively. "Our father's name is Harold Sterling. Rachel kept our mother's name after the divorce." The clarification seemed important to her, a way to maintain some separation between us. "My apologies," Antonio said smoothly. "Mr. Sterling, your daughter is remarkable. Half the restaurants in this city would hire her firm if they could afford her rates." Thomas returned to the table, his complexion noticeably paler than when he'd left. He whispered something in Kate's ear that made her eyes widen before she quickly composed her features. "Well, this has been enlightening," Kate said with a brittle smile. "But it's getting late, and I'm sure Daddy is tired. Shall we call it a night?" Antonio insisted on personally escorting our party out, treating me with the deference usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. As we reached the main entrance, the valet supervisor greeted me by name. "Your usual car, Ms. Coleman?" he asked. "Yes, thank you, Michael," I responded, suddenly aware of my family watching this exchange. "The Tesla or the weekend car?" he clarified, referring to the sports car I occasionally drove. "The Tesla tonight, thanks," I confirmed, avoiding Kate's stunned gaze. As we waited for our vehicles, Antonio made one final attempt to apologize for the card incident, mentioning in the process several other high-profile clients my firm had helped, and the charity foundation I'd established with part of my software company proceeds. Each revelation seemed to hit Kate like a physical blow, her perfect evening of superiority unraveling completely before her eyes. An uncomfortable silence enveloped us as we stood waiting for our cars in front of Bellissimo. The valets worked efficiently, but those few minutes felt eternal. Dad kept glancing between Kate and me, as if trying to reconcile years of Kate's narratives about my modest achievements with Antonio's revelations. My Tesla arrived first, the sleek electric vehicle purring quietly to a stop. The valet handed me the key with a respectful nod. "Miss Coleman, I took the liberty of charging it while you dined. You should have about 300 miles of range." "Thank you, Eric," I replied, tipping him generously. Kate cleared her throat as the valet walked away. "So you have a Tesla. How environmentally conscious of you." Her attempt at recovering composure was transparent. "Among other cars," I said simply, not elaborating on the limited edition sports car or the vintage roadster in my garage. There was no need to rub it in further. Thomas's phone buzzed again. He checked it, whispered something to Kate, and stepped away to make another call, his body language tense. Diana broke the awkward silence. "Rachel, what you've accomplished is remarkable. You should be very proud." "Thanks, Diana," I said, genuinely appreciating her warmth. Unlike Kate, Diana had never treated me with anything but kindness. Dad approached me, his expression a mixture of confusion and emerging pride. "Why keep all the secrets, sweetheart? All these years, we thought you were just getting by." Before I could answer, Kate interjected, her voice sharp. "Yes, Rachel, why hide your success from family? Unless you enjoyed letting us think you were struggling while secretly judging our lifestyle." And there it was, Kate's remarkable ability to twist any situation to make herself the victim. After years of her condescension, she was now suggesting I had been the one looking down on her. "I never hid anything, Kate," I said quietly. "I just didn't broadcast it. There's a difference. But all those times I offered to help you network, to introduce you to Thomas's contacts. You offered to help me find real jobs, as you called them," I corrected her. "You referred to my business as my little computer hobby at Thanksgiving 3 years ago." Ryan stepped forward. "Kate, come on. You've been dismissing Rachel's career for as long as I can remember." Kate's eyes flashed. "I was trying to help. How was I supposed to know she was secretly some tech millionaire?" "You could have asked," I said simply. "You could have shown interest in what I actually do instead of assuming I needed your guidance and pity." Dad looked pained. "Girls, please. It's still my birthday." I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this night was supposed to be about him, not the long-simmering tension between Kate and me. "You're right, Dad. I'm sorry." Thomas returned, looking distinctly unwell. He pulled Kate aside, speaking urgently in low tones. I couldn't hear their words, but the panic in his expression was unmistakable. Kate's face shifted from annoyance to shock, then something that looked remarkably like fear. Ryan moved to stand beside me. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I always knew you were the real deal. Maybe not 7-figure contract real, but legitimate success." That never surprised me. I squeezed his arm gratefully. "Thanks, Ryan. That means a lot." Kate and Thomas rejoined our circle, both looking shaken. "We need to go," Kate announced abruptly. "Family emergency." Dad frowned. "Is everything okay?" "Fine," Kate said tersely. "Just something we need to handle tonight." Their car arrived, and Thomas practically leapt toward it. As Kate moved to follow him, I made a decision. "Kate," I called. "Can we talk for a minute? Alone?" She hesitated, clearly torn between escape and curiosity. "Thomas needs just 1 minute," I insisted. With visible reluctance, she stepped away from the others to join me near the restaurant's garden wall. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, sisters who had grown so far apart. "Whatever financial emergency Thomas is dealing with," I said quietly, "I can help." Her eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "I've been in business long enough to recognize the signs. His urgent calls, the panic, your sudden need to leave. If you're in trouble, I can help." Kate's carefully maintained facade cracked. For a brief moment, I glimpsed real vulnerability in her eyes before the defensive walls slammed back into place. "We don't need your charity," she hissed. "It's not charity, Kate. It's family." Family, she repeated with a harsh laugh. Is that why you've been hiding your success all these years? To what end? So you could have a moment exactly like this. I didn't hide anything to hurt you, I said honestly. I kept my success private because I learned early that wealth changes how people see you. After Mom and Dad split, you became obsessed with status and appearances. I took a different path. Well, congratulations on your moral superiority, Kate snapped, but there was a tremor in her voice. This isn't about superiority, I insisted. Kate, we're still sisters. Whatever is happening with Thomas. You don't know anything about my life, she interrupted, but the conviction was draining from her voice. I know more than you think, I said gently. And I know that whatever financial problems you're facing, there are solutions that don't involve maintaining appearances at all costs. For a moment, Kate seemed on the verge of breaking down. Then Thomas honked the car horn impatiently, and her expression hardened again. I need to go, she said firmly. Thomas is waiting. Kate, I called as she turned away. My offer stands. Anytime. She didn't respond, simply walking quickly to where Thomas waited in their luxury sedan that, I now suspected, they could no longer afford. As their car pulled away, Dad approached, looking concerned. Everything okay with Kate and Thomas? I'm not sure, I answered honestly. But I hope it will be. Dad hesitated, then asked the question I could see had been bothering him all evening. Why didn't you tell me about your business success, Rachel? Did you think I wouldn't be proud? The question pierced deeper than I expected. No, Dad. It wasn't that, I searched for the right words. After the divorce, Kate became Mom's daughter, and I became yours, at least in Kate's mind. She built her identity around being the successful child who followed the traditional path, marriage to a successful man, social status, the right connections. And you thought telling me about your achievements would somehow hurt her. Dad looked pained at the implication. I thought it might change things between all of us, I admitted. And maybe part of me was waiting to be asked. To have someone in the family show genuine interest in what I was building. Ryan joined us, having overheard. I asked, he said quietly. You always deflected. I smiled sadly at my brother. You're right. I got so used to downplaying things that it became habit, even with you. I'm sorry for that. Diana came over with her gentle, peacemaking presence. Well, now we know. And we couldn't be prouder, right, Harold? Dad nodded, putting his arm around me. More than you could imagine, sweetheart. As we stood there in the cool evening air, the restaurant door opened once more and Antonio emerged, holding a small gift bag. Ms. Coleman, I almost forgot. We have a small birthday gift for your father. He handed the bag to Dad with a flourish. A bottle of our private reserve balsamic, aged 25 years. And a standing invitation to dine with us anytime. Dad accepted the gift with surprised gratitude. After Antonio returned inside, he turned to me with wonder. $700,000 contracts, Rachel. Really? I nodded, finally letting myself acknowledge my success openly with my family. That one and others. My firm specializes in business transformations. And you sold a software company? Diana asked, clearly trying to piece together the full picture. When I was 29, I confirmed. The logistics platform I built in college. Ryan shook his head with a mixture of admiration and exasperation. All those times Kate was patronizing you about your computer hobby, you were probably worth more than all of us combined. Money isn't everything, I said automatically, then laughed at how cliched it sounded. But yes, financially speaking, I've done well. My car had been waiting, the valet patiently standing by. I should get going, I said. It's been quite an evening. Dad hugged me tightly. We have a lot to catch up on, it seems. Dinner at your place next time. I want to see where my successful daughter lives. I returned his embrace, realizing how much I'd missed this simple approval. Absolutely. You'll all have to come over soon. As I slid into my car and pulled away from the restaurant, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my family, still standing on the sidewalk. Dad looked thoughtful, Diana pleased, and Ryan frankly amazed. Only Kate and Thomas were missing from the picture, racing off to deal with whatever financial crisis had finally caught up with them. Despite the evening's drama, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was finally out, for better or worse. What happened next would depend on choices each of us made, especially Kate. 1 month later, I stood in my kitchen, arranging a platter of appetizers while looking out through floor-to-ceiling windows at the Boston skyline. The penthouse apartment I'd purchased after selling my company had remained my private sanctuary for years, a place known to friends and business associates, but never to family. Until today. Dad, Diana, and Ryan would arrive any minute. Kate and Thomas had also accepted my invitation, somewhat to my surprise. Our communication since Dad's birthday dinner had been limited to a few terse text messages, but something in Kate's final, "We'll be there," suggested a shift I couldn't quite identify. The past month had brought significant changes. After years of compartmentalizing my life, keeping family separate from my business success, I was finally integrating these worlds. The relief was profound, like setting down a heavy suitcase I'd been carrying for miles. The intercom buzzed, announcing my first guests. Dad and Diana arrived looking relaxed and happy. Dad embraced me warmly before stepping into the open-concept living area, his eyes widening as he took in the space. "This is where you've been living?" he asked, walking toward the windows with their panoramic city view. "All these years." "For the past 5 years," I confirmed. "After I sold the company." Diana touched a framed photograph on the wall, me with my original software team, the day we launched our first major product. "You look so young there," she observed. 24, I said. We'd been working 18-hour days for months to meet that deadline. Ryan arrived next, whistling low as he entered. "Nice place, sis." "Very nice," he grinned. Though I noticed no gold-plated anything. "Kate would be disappointed." I laughed, appreciating his attempt to lighten the mood before Kate and Thomas arrived. We all knew their presence would inevitably bring tension, despite my hopes for reconciliation. The final buzz of the intercom came 20 minutes later. When I opened the door, I barely recognized the couple standing there. Kate wore simple jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfit, her hair pulled back without elaborate styling. Thomas looked thinner, the cocky gleam in his eye replaced by something humbler. "Sorry we're late," Kate said, offering a bottle of wine that cost perhaps $20, a far cry from the premium vintages she'd previously insisted were the only acceptable offerings. Traffic was heavy. I accepted the wine with genuine thanks, noting the lack of artifice in her manner. Something significant had clearly changed. As we settled in the living room with drinks, the initial conversation remained cautious. Weather, city events, neutral topics that wouldn't disturb the fragile peace. Finally, during a lull, Kate set down her glass decisively. "I've started therapy," she announced without preamble. "Twice weekly." The room fell silent. Kate had always dismissed therapy as for people too weak to handle their own problems. "That's great," I said carefully. "How's it going?" "It's hard," she admitted, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Turns out I have what my therapist calls status anxiety and comparison compulsion." Who knew? Her attempt at humor fell flat, but I appreciated the effort. Thomas cleared his throat. "We've also been seeing a financial counselor." After some issues came to light. Dad looked concerned. "What kind of issues?" Kate and Thomas exchanged glances before Thomas continued. "I made some high-risk investments that didn't pan out. And I had a gambling problem that got out of hand. We've had to make significant lifestyle changes. We sold the vacation house," Kate added. "And we're listing the main house next week. Moving to a condo downtown." The admission clearly cost her, but I also sensed something unexpected: relief. As if acknowledging these struggles had removed a crushing weight. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said sincerely. "But I'm glad you're getting help." Kate looked at me directly for the first time that evening. "I didn't accept your offer that night because I was too proud. And angry. And embarrassed." "I understand," I said simply. But, she continued, we might need to talk about it now. Not charity, she added quickly. Maybe a business loan. Thomas is good at what he does when he's not distracted by other things. We have a plan. We can definitely discuss it, I agreed, surprised and touched by her willingness to approach me for help after years of treating my business acumen with disdain. As we moved to the dining table, the conversation gradually relaxed. Ryan shared news about his recent promotion. Dad proudly showed photos of the workshop he'd started building, with Diana adding details about their booked river cruise. I've been telling everyone about my daughter, the business genius, Dad admitted with a sheepish smile. Hope that's okay. More than okay, I assured him, realizing how much I'd missed his pride over the years. After dinner, Ryan approached me with an unexpected proposition. I've been thinking about a new construction technology that could revolutionize sustainable building, he began. Would you be willing to look at my business plan? Maybe offer some advice? Of course, I said immediately. Actually, if it's solid, I might be interested in more than just advice. My firm is always looking for innovative investments. Ryan's eyes widened. Seriously? That would be incredible. As the evening progressed, Kate pulled me aside onto the balcony. The night air was cool, the city lights creating a glittering backdrop for a conversation I never expected to have. I've been horrible to you, she said without preamble. For years. I started to offer a polite denial, but she shook her head. No, let's be honest for once. I treated you terribly. Every family gathering, every phone call, I found ways to make you feel less than. To reinforce that I was the successful one, the one who made the right choices. We took different paths, I said carefully. I married status, Kate corrected. You built something real, she gazed out at the city. Do you know when it started? The competition between us. After the divorce, I guessed. Before that, Kate said. When we were kids and Dad would get so excited about your science projects and computer programs. I was the pretty one, the social one, but you were the one who made Dad's eyes light up with pride. The revelation stunned me. All these years, I'd assumed Kate's behavior stemmed from her sense of superiority, not insecurity about Dad's approval. After the divorce, she continued, I doubled down on being Mom's daughter, perfect appearance, right social circles, marrying well. It was the only space where I felt I could win. It wasn't a competition, Kate, I said gently. Everything was a competition to me, she admitted. That's what my therapist is helping me understand. And look where it got me, a marriage built on appearances, friends who disappeared the minute we downsized, and a sister I barely know despite growing up in the same house. For the first time in our adult lives, I saw Kate without her defenses. No pretense, no performance, just my sister struggling to rebuild her life on more authentic terms. It's not too late, I told her. For any of it. Marriages can heal with work. And sisters, I smiled slightly. Sisters have a lifetime to get it right. Even after everything I've said and done, Kate looked skeptical. Family is complicated, I said. But it's also resilient. We rejoined the others inside, where Thomas was having what appeared to be a genuine conversation with Ryan about sustainable investing. Dad watched his children with undisguised happiness, Diana beside him wearing a satisfied smile that said her years of peacemaking efforts were finally bearing fruit. Over the following months, our family transformed. Kate continued therapy, developing healthier perspectives on success and worth. Thomas entered a gambling recovery program and slowly rebuilt his career with a focus on ethical investment practices. With my guidance, they developed a realistic plan to repay their debts, which included a properly structured loan from my firm with fair terms. Ryan and I launched a venture together, combining his engineering expertise with my business acumen to develop eco-friendly building technologies. Working together revealed similarities we'd never recognized. The same analytical approach, the same dry humor under pressure, the same integrity in our business dealings. Dad's workshop became a gathering place where he taught all three of his children the basics of woodworking. Those Sunday afternoons, sawdust in the air, and the scent of freshly cut pine created the relaxed family environment we'd never fully experienced in childhood. As for me, the weight of hiding my success lifted completely. I spoke openly about my business, shared both triumphs and challenges, and discovered that authentic connections, even with family, were possible without either minimizing or flaunting my achievements. Kate and I developed a cautious but genuine friendship. During one of our newly established monthly sister lunches, she asked a question that showed how far she'd come. "Do you think wealth makes it harder to know who you really are?" she mused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. I spent so many years defining myself by Thomas's income and our social position that I'm not sure I know who Kate is without all that. "I think wealth is like any other circumstance," I replied. "It can clarify or distort your self-image, depending on how you relate to it. For me, building wealth was never about acquiring status symbols. It was about creating something valuable and having the freedom to choose my next challenges." Kate nodded slowly. "I'm learning that status doesn't bring happiness. It's exhausting, actually, constantly maintaining appearances." "And what does bring happiness?" I asked, genuinely curious about her evolving perspective. She considered the question seriously. "Purpose, maybe. Thomas seems more fulfilled working with his debt counseling group than he ever did making millions on questionable investments. And I've actually enjoyed teaching art at the community center, something I would have considered beneath me 6 months ago." The wisdom in her observation struck me deeply. For all our differences, perhaps Kate and I were finally discovering similar truths: that authentic achievement, meaningful connections, and living according to one's genuine values created a richness that no bank account or social status could provide. The night of that disastrous birthday dinner, when my black card was declined and Antonio revealed my success to my family, had been humiliating in the moment. But it had also been necessary, a catalyst for truth and eventually healing. The mockery turned to shock, then to understanding, and finally to something I'd never expected to find in my relationship with Kate: mutual respect. Success isn't measured by who's impressed at a dinner table or by numbers in a bank account. True wealth comes from living authentically, from creating value for others, and from relationships built on genuine understanding rather than performance and pretense. My sister and I had taken very different paths to learn the same essential lesson: that we are more than what we own, more than how others perceive us, and infinitely more than our worst moments of insecurity or pride. Have you ever had a moment when false perceptions about you suddenly crumbled, revealing your true worth to someone who underestimated you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more authentic life experiences. Sharing this with someone who might be struggling with family dynamics could help them know they're not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. May you always know your true value isn't in what you have, but in who you genuinely are.